When you're staring at a mountain of specs and glossy marketing images, it's easy to wonder if any of it really matters for the way you actually play, work, or binge watch at home. That hesitation is what I felt before digging into this ASUS ROG Swift 32-inch 4K OLED. I wanted to know whether the headline numbers 240Hz, true 10-bit color, a custom heatsink translate into day-to-day value, or if I'd end up with a beautiful but impractical piece of kit. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the kind of environment where this monitor lives. I set it up on a desk that's just big enough for a 32-inch panel, with a decent ergonomic chair, and a room that can be dimmed but isn't a blackout theater. The OLED panel instantly feels different from a typical IPS screen. The blacks are genuinely black, not just very dark gray. That depth makes both darkroom gaming and HDR movies feel more immersive. The 99% DCI-P3 coverage and true 10-bit processing mean that gradients in a cinematic scene or a photo edit don't band. You get a smooth, lifelike palette that rivals many high-end TV panels. What really matters in a gaming context is how fast the image updates and how clean the input is. The 240Hz refresh rate paired with a 0.03 milliseconds response time delivers fluid motion that you can see when you're pulling off a quick flick in a fast-paced shooter. I ran a few competitive titles, Valorant, CS2, and a high frame rate race sim using the monitor's GSC compatibility. The result was a buttery smooth experience without the tearing you sometimes get on a standard 144Hz panel, even when the GPU was pushing the frame rate above 200 frames per second. For gamers who thrive on split-second reactions, that consistency is a tangible advantage. Color-critical work is another arena where the ROG Swift shines. The 4K resolution gives you a comfortable pixel density for UI scaling, and the QD-OLED technology, combined with the 99% DCI-P3 gamut, provides a very accurate color volume right out of the box. I spent a few evenings editing some 4K footage in DaVinci Resolve, and the monitor's uniform brightness setting kept the screen from looking like a patchwork of hot and cold spots, which can happen on larger OLEDs. The true 10-bit depth means you see more than the usual 16 million colors, which is a real benefit when you're grading footage or tweaking photo tones. Now, the practical side of the hardware. ASUS has put a custom heatsink and an advanced airflow design behind the panel, and you can actually feel the difference when the monitor is under load. After a marathon gaming session, the surface stayed comfortably cool, and there was no noticeable throttling in brightness or performance. The graphene film adds a subtle anti-reflective quality, which helps in rooms with some ambient light, though you'll still want to dim the lights for the best HDR experience. The built-in display widget center gives you quick access to OLED care functions, like pixel shift and panel dimming, which are useful tools to mitigate the risk of burn-in over the long term. Speaking of burn-in, that's one of the hidden trade-offs you have to weigh. OLED panels are celebrated for their perfect blacks, but they can be susceptible to static image retention if you leave UI elements on the screen for hours on end. The ROG Swift does include preventative features, but the risk isn't eliminated. If you primarily use the monitor for fast-moving games, video, or content that constantly changes, you're in a safer zone. However, if you plan to keep a stock ticker, a chat window, or a static dashboard displayed for extended periods, you might want to look at an IPS alternative that isn't vulnerable to that particular wear pattern. Brightness is another practical consideration. The monitor meets VISA Display HDR 400 standards, which is a step up from basic HDR, but it's still modest compared to the HDR 600+ panels you see on premium TVs. In a dimly lit room, the HDR effect is pleasant, delivering decent highlights without crushing details. In a brighter living area, however, you might notice the peak luminance struggling to punch through daylight coming through windows. If you need a screen that can double as a primary TV for a well-lit family room, you may end up dimming the environment more than you'd like. Connectivity-wise, the 90W USB-C port is a solid convenience. I plugged my laptop straight into the monitor, and it powered up while delivering a 4K signal at 60 Hz for work tasks. That means fewer cables on the desk and the ability to use the monitor as a hub for peripherals. For gamers who prefer a console, the HDMI 2.1 ports support full 4K at 120Hz, so you can hook up the latest PlayStation or Xbox and still benefit from the high refresh rate, albeit not the full 240Hz you get from a PC. Who should seriously consider this machine? If you're a competitive PC gamer who already runs a GPU capable of pushing 200+ FPS at 4K, the combination of 240Hz, GSCNC, and ultra-low response time is a clear upgrade that will translate into measurable performance gains. If